Good evening, everyone. My name is Moises Esparza. I'm the exhibitions manager for the San Diego Latino Film Festival. Thank you so much for joining us on day 6 of our annual celebration of Latino cinema. We are coming to you completely virtual this year through the Eventive platform. Our festival was postponed back in March due to COVID-19 concerns. So we're just really happy to be able to bring you all of our amazing programming directly to your homes, where we hope you're staying safe. The awesome thing about this virtual platform is that I get to engage with many more filmmakers than I've ever had an opportunity to. And joining us for today's post-screening discussion of Gaytino, Made in America, is the star and creator Dan Guerrero. Let me welcome him into the stream.
Hola, Moses. How are you?
Good. It's so nice to see you.
It's my pleasure. How are you holding up? Congratulations. Doing a virtual film festival is a mammoth undertaking and what new territory. You're just making it up as you go along.
Yeah, making it up as we go along. I might write a one-man show about it and take it to the stage.
You know what? You're still young, so you're wise. I waited a little too long.
Well, you've lived quite a life, as we saw in your one-man show. At what point in your life did you think, I have to sit down, put this all out on paper, and go on stage and perform it?
Well, it's very funny because I've always been, as many of us are in the industry, whether you be a writer or a performer, how important it is to share our stories. You know, Latino stories are so important to share because if we don't do them, nobody else is going to be doing them. So that's always was in the back of my mind, which is why I wrote the play in the first place, you know. And I performed it all over the country for years, literally. But that doesn't mean I did it 20,000 times. I still make a living as a producer and director. So I would do 2, sometimes 3 performances a year. That's all, you know. And as the years went on, it became increasingly difficult not to do the show. But, you know, I'd fly across country next day, 6 hours on my feet, you know, doing a tech. Next morning, a run through performance at night and fly back. It was just too much. And so I thought, you know, I have to film this before I get any older. I wrote it when I was 65. I'd never written a play. I had not performed on stage in 35 years back in New York in an off-Broadway show. And so it made perfect sense for me, you know, to write a solo show. But I want to tell those stories. And then I got to an age and a time when I thought, if I don't film it, I'm going to be 80 next month. And I thought, if I don't film it now, it ain't going to happen. And all those stories will be lost. You know, who's going to know what my dad, Lalo Guerrero, was like as a dad? Or my boyhood friend, Carlos Almaraz, you know, who was a legendary, you know, visual artists that we lost to AIDS, and all those stories would be gone, you know. So I never really think of this as my story. I really don't. It's about what it was like to be gay in 1950s East LA, what it was like to be Mexican. You know, that's what we were in those days. We weren't Chicanos, we weren't Mexican Americans, we were Mexicans. You know, so that whole journey, that whole trajectory, I thought it was important, especially for our young people. You know, to know their heroes. I wanted them to know about Dad and Carlos and Dolores and Caesar and Luis Valdez, you know. Anyway, that's a long-winded answer to your short question.
No, thank you. I appreciate your feedback so much. Before we do a deep dive into the film, I'm really curious about how you went about deciding the staging for the filming, because it all felt so organic. It felt like we were part of the audience. How did you conceptualize transferring your play into a motion picture?
I pretty much did what I had always done, you know, which is simple storytelling. I'm not an actor, you know, I'm a storyteller. And I was concerned about it transferring to the stage, as you say. And I had 2 fantastic Chicana exec producers, Linda Bracero Morel and Linda Mendoza. And Linda Mendoza says the very first time she saw the play, she could see it cinematically.
Mm.
The way she put it is, when you're seeing a play, you're seeing everything in a wide shot. Everything's in a wide shot. But with a camera, you can zoom right in. When I'm talking about Carlos and the hospital, that hospital scene, it's right here. You're not looking at an entire panorama. And I tried to do the same thing. I changed no staging. It was exactly like I had done it on the stage live. Well, I did it live. This was 2 live performances with 2 different audiences, and then we intercut.
Oh wow.
And,
Okay.
yeah. And so I purposely, one of the things, it's an intimate piece, and a stage is a big old stage. And so I didn't want to be lost on the stage. So I had just directed, like 6 or 8 months earlier, a mariachi opera with a mariachi Vargas. And it was similar because it was an intimate opera. There were only 8 opera singers, no chorus, so it was kind of intimate. So I asked the set designer, Efren Delgadillo, to build a playing area on the big stage. I didn't want actors running 45 feet across stage, to be in a little scene. And it worked beautifully. So I used him again for Gaytino, and I said the same thing. I wanted a little jewel box theater with red velvet curtains like the old days, and it gave me a very intimate playing area. And so it kept the intimacy of a live show. And that's why I designed that opening, where you see the cameraman and you see the people rehearsing, you see backstage, and then you see a door slam after people walk in. I wanted them to really know they were seeing a play. It is a film of a live play. So I think all those things together, in fact, people, God bless them, my friends are really friends. Some of them have seen the play 6, 7 times because it would evolve over the years,
Okay.
And they actually said they liked it better on the screen. They liked it better on the screen, which I thought was very interesting.
That is surprising. Okay. I want to think about why that would be. Maybe we can talk about it a little bit later. But talking about the scope of your story, and you just said to yourself, you are a storyteller, and my gosh, what a story. I guess from when you were writing it, how did you come up with a balance between the personal and the historical? Because I think the 2 run so elegantly parallel to one another, and sometimes not only parallel, really like intersect with your life, whether you're talking about life in New York, the Chicano liberation movement, really, I mean, every aspect of your life, your experiences with Carlos. Tell me about this balance that you struck, and how you went around structuring the play.
Well, I must remember not to wear red. I look like I'm sunburned. Red is not good on Zoom. Make a note. I look so red. I'm looking at me. Why do I look reddish? Actually, what I did, Moises, truly, because I didn't know where to begin. Just like you, I thought I've lived an unbelievable life, and the duality. That's why the tagline is mariachi to Merman, Sondheim to Cesar Chavez. Not many people have lived fully both those lives and integrated them, and then who my dad was, who my best friend was. So, but that was a lot of territory to cover. So I began by making 2 lists, a Chicano list and a gay list. And the first time I felt discriminated as a Mexican American, as a gay man, the first time this, the first time that, and each of those, there was a story. I mean, there, it wasn't like when was I? They were there. So each one had a true story. There is not one line in that entire 75-minute film that I had to make up. Every story is exactly as I told it. So I had this list, and then I started to mix them up, and kind of. I didn't expect the film to be so linear. I wanted to jump around a lot more, but very early on, I thought, I'm covering how many decades, and I was concerned people wouldn't know where the hell they were. So it's more linear than I anticipated. And that's why I created that device. You know, the 1960s, John F. Kennedy's elected president, Doris Day is still, so they knew exactly where they were in each of those eras. Now, younger people are going, who's Doris Day? You know, and Chicanos have never seen a musical go, who's Ethel Merman? But, you know, hell with them. They're all quick. You know, it's not like I spent 20 minutes on Ethel Merman. If you don't know who she is, she's gone in a second. So, you know, it just fell where it fell, you know. But that's how the integration came between the two, from mixing those stories somewhat chronologically.
Well, that's something that's so amazing about you, is that you represent a beautiful intersection of being gay and Latino. I don't know if you identify as Chicano, but maybe even gay and Chicano.
I totally am Chicano. I'm totally.
And then gay and Mexican American. So in the process of labeling, there's a lot of representation that goes along with it. So you are just so fascinating. I mean, your play was very fascinating to me, and by extension, your life, because you represent, I guess, an amazing example of intersectionality and how different identities inform experience. And what I thought was so lyrical and poetic about your film is that you made that all so tangible. There were a lot of things about your play that I related to extensively, being gay, being Mexican, but even the stuff that was a little bit foreign to me, I felt like you provided such a clear entry point, even if there were fleeting mentions, but still really well organized and just really beautifully done.
Thank you so much. It's a great deal. You really got it. I mean, thank you so much.
So I just want to take a moment to address people listening. Dan, people can leave comments. I don't know if you see this popping up on the lower third. I'm producing and asking questions. So I'm taking questions. So it's Vicky Sampson says, "Hi, Dan."
She's a wonderful, wonderful filmmaker and a beautiful human being. We met at the Sedona International Film Festival. Just literally, we got home days before everything shut down. And she lives here in LA. And we were going to do this, we were going to do that. And then, but she's wonderful. Hi, Vicky.
Thanks for tuning in, Vicky. On this topic of identity, I guess what I'm going to touch upon occurs maybe when you decide to, or after you leave New York. You say something along the lines of you become a born again. Is it born again Hispanic, you said, or born again Latino?
I do not like that word Hispanic at all, but that was what my LA friends called me. So I kept it. I don't like the word Hispanic. I never use it. But in that context, that's what they called me. And it actually made the line funnier. A born again Hispanic is funnier than a born again Latino. You know?
I totally get it. But I guess tell me a little bit about that specifically. Like, what does that mean to be born again?
It means that, as you saw, and is not unusual, as a young man, I didn't feel Mexican. You know, I just didn't. And there my father was, Lalo Guerrero, writing rancheras in the living room. And I'm listening to, My Fair Lady in my room with the door closed, you know. So I didn't really relate. I didn't feel as Mexican as the Mexicans that were at Garfield at that time. My background was completely different than anyone else's, with a father who was a public figure. You know, he didn't go to work in the morning. He went at night in a suit and a tie. You know, it was a very different experience. So I didn't really relate. And really my only Mexican friend was Carlos. And then when I went to New York, as opposed to any discrimination that took place in LA, it was exotic. They'd never seen a Mexican American. They didn't even know what it was. There, as I say in the play, there was literally one Mexican restaurant in all of Manhattan. Can you believe that? One.
That's wild.
One, you know? And so it was exotic. So, you know, there was this one store in the Village that sold all Mexican handicrafts. So my first Christmas tree in New York was all Mexican, you know. So all my New York friends, and that was the thrilling part too. Because in LA, we were all pretty much the same. You know, there were Asians in my high school, Mexican Americans, Asians, no other Latinos at that time. There was no Central Americans. It was Mexican Americans, Jews, Armenians, but we were all pretty much alike. We all spoke same, and suddenly in New York, I literally had friends from Latvia, from Dublin, from London, and oh my God, it was fantastic. So especially to those people, being Mexican American was incredibly exotic, But I really, literally, even though everyone knew I was obviously Mexican American, and I never said why I'm Spanish. I mean, never. But at the same time, I was really living a white man's life for 20 years. I was on Broadway. I had no Latino friends in New York, none. And so it wasn't until every time I'd come out to LA to see Carlos at Christmas, he was in the deep of it all with Caesar and Dolores and, the whole movement. And I started to get kind of fired up about it. But then I go back to New York and they would go away. But it was seeing Zoot Suit on Broadway.
Yes. When
my two worlds collide. And I'm at Sardi's, and instead of Gwen Verdon being there is Lupe Ontiveros. God bless her. It was total cultural shock. And it made me realize that I missed that world. And each time that I came back to LA, I could really see how little had changed for us. In 20 years, I was still opening the LA Times, and every ad had no Latinos anywhere, in any ad, May Company, nowhere. I thought, still? After the moratorium and all that stuff, nothing had changed. So then I started to get pissed. I think you have to be pissed to be an activist. You have to be pissed. And maybe if I'd been brought up in a border town in Arizona or Texas, maybe I'd have gotten pissed earlier. But I was in New York, in the musical theater. I was a million miles from any of that. So when it finally caught up with me and came home, I was like into it, 1,000%. And I joined Latino organizations. I started producing. I had never produced, but I knew enough from all my years in New York, fundraising events for the Bilingual Foundation of the Arts. And I was on the board of the Latino Theater Company. And that's when my friends started calling me a born-again Hispanic. And as I say, I was completely Mexicano, Chicano, and I was gay on the side. Everyone knew I was gay, but in the 80s, you still didn't really talk about it. You knew, and everybody knew. My partner Richard would work with me on projects. Everybody knew, but you didn't discuss it. And then after I wrote Gaytino, it's pulled around, and all of a sudden, I became this LGBTQ, more specifically Latino LGBTQ activist. And then that took first position, which was kind of interesting. And then I finally kind of brought them together. So now I'm a Gaytino.
Gaytino. Dan, we have a comment and a new question that rolled in. Andres Martin says, "Hi, Dan, and welcome back to the STLFF."
Hi, Andres. I love San Diego.
And then people can also submit questions via the Eventive platform, which is where they watch the film. And one came in from Jesse Tafalia. I'm just going to throw it on screen for you in just 1 second. This is more about, I guess, the distribution of the film. Jesse asks, how does your fans and the general public help to get your story, this film, in parentheticals, distributed, Amazon, etc.? I guess maybe, talk a little bit about where this film is going and distribution.
When I was going to do the film, I knew that no one was going to pay me to do it. I mean, HBO was not going to say, hey, here's X amount of dollars, do the film. It just was not going to happen. I'm not John Leguizamo. I mean, I have no name. So I knew I had to do it myself. Well, myself and friends. So I went to friends who were in positions at foundations that could have discretionary funds, and they helped. And we had a crowdfunding campaign. And so I own it completely because I did it all with my friends. And that included music clearance, which was not cheap. And I didn't have to pay for Dad's music, of course, but I have 6 Broadway songs in it. So I got clearance only for film festivals. And even that wasn't cheap, but I had the crowdfunding money. But now I actually have a distributor, a major one, who is interested in distributing. I always thought, okay, I'm not famous. If I just get it in Chicano studies departments, and universities and in classrooms, I'm happy. To me, it's an entertainment, but it was an educational piece. But this distributor wants to look into Amazon and Netflix and all that stuff, but I have to now clear all music and all media for perpetuity on the planet Jupiter, that whole thing. You wouldn't believe the money they're asking for.
Oh my God.
I don't know how the hell, because I can't do it without the music. And I wouldn't do it without the music. I could have written it without the music, but it's such an integral part of my life. It had to be in the show. So that's the only thing that's holding it back right now. I need to figure out, either negotiate with them to get some fairly decent money down. I might have to do another crowdfunding campaign. I don't really know. And then they can go out and pitch it, but they won't pitch it without full clearance, which makes perfect sense. So it's in the works. It's in the works. Fear not.
It's going to happen.
I hope so.
You paid such beautiful tribute to your friend Carlos Almaraz in the film. Have you seen the documentary that Richard Montoya made about Carlos?
I'm in it. Yes, I've seen it several times.
Did you see the final cut?
Sure. And yes, it's incredible. Richard Montoya and Elsa Flores Almaraz.
Right.
And it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. Yeah.
Your friendship was really was really touching. I guess, what sort of tribute did you hope to pay to Carlos by including him? So sorry.
That was it. What you're saying. I wanted you to really get to know him, and as you see, again by design, I'm calling him Charles because he was Charles, and I don't use the last name. And when I was doing it in small venues in the beginning, when your audience is 7 feet away from you, there were many times when I would get there and I go, and Charles becomes Carlos, and Carlos Almaraz becomes. I literally would hear gasp, because people didn't realize I was talking about Carlos.
Got it. Okay.
And the point is that the natural progression, I didn't have to build it. It was there. My hope was that by the time Carlos, we do lose him, everyone feels it, because they have grown to love him too. It's dual. I had hoped that they would have fallen in love with Carlos during the show. And also, his passing took people back, many people of a certain age, to that era when they lost a best friend, they lost a partner, or it didn't have to be to AIDS, a young person who lost somebody. So everyone, they feel Carlos passing, and yet it takes them to a personal story, I'm sure, having lost someone special. So it's I sometimes, I have to control myself in that scene, because you have to get totally into it to project it so you get it, but you have to control it. I can't start because that ain't cool. So, and sometimes if I'm particularly tired, if I've been flying and I'm there and I'm not got it so focused, it really gets to me, and I have to really fight to keep from kind of breaking down. Yeah. I still miss him every day. He was a pain in the ass too, by the way. It's not that he was perfect at all, but oh my God.
That's what friends are like.
Yeah. No, he was really something. He was something.
Well, you mentioned earlier that you don't consider yourself to be an actor, but I do consider you to be a comedian based on what I saw on screen.
Yeah.
You land some amazing, I guess, punchlines in some very funny bits in the film that are balanced so well with the more emotional scenes. Have you ever had this propensity towards comedy?
I always have, but here's the problem. I was always funny. I mean, in school I was. And when I went to perform in my 20s, believe it or not, look at this now, I was very handsome. And so I would always get these sappy juvenile roles. I would never get the funny sidekick guy. I would get the romantic young juvenile. So boring. And so I never got a chance to do that. And then, quite by accident, I fell into becoming a theatrical agent for Broadway, as you know. And I thought, oh, I'll do this for 3 or 4 years. 12 years later, and then I came out to LA and I started producing and directing. So I literally, my whole performing career went away for 35 years. But in the back of my head, I always thought, well, someday when I'm an old man and all crotchety and nobody wants me, I can be a very funny character actor. And so that's when I wrote Gaytino. I'm like, okay, it looks like the time has come, you know. And I really did not want to sit there with 40 other guys to say one line in a sitcom, you know, audition. I thought, no, I'm not doing that. So that also played in. All those reasons converged, wanting to tell our stories, wanted them to people to know Dad and Carlos, my getting back on stage without having to audition, all that came together. And yeah, so I'm not dead yet. You may see me on a sitcom before I croak. You never know.
I know. I'm sure that I will. Yeah. You describe your realization that you're gay as almost a surprise. You're looking, I think, at yourself in the mirror, evaluating certain characteristics of yourself, and then this one comes into focus. I guess was it challenging for you to include that the way it happened in the play?
No, it's strange. Yeah. A lot of people ask me, was it cathartic? You know?
Yeah. Maybe that's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah. No, not at all. None of it was hard. It really wasn't. It's like I fully experience things and then I move on. I don't really bury them or try and forget them. And to tell you the truth, there are things, personal things that I could have included, but I didn't want to go there.
Okay.
I wanted the piece to be celebratory. I wanted you to know that it was no walk in the park being a young gay boy in 1950s, that it wasn't easy being a Mexican American always. I do make those points, but then I'm off them with a joke, as you say. I wanted to keep a celebratory feeling that, yes, I was Chicano and I am Chicano and I was gay and I am gay and all these things, but I've had a fantastic life. You know, when I was looking in that mirror at 14, I had no idea what it meant to be gay because I didn't know what that meant in my life. What kind of job would I have? Would people hire? You know, you just didn't know anything. You knew nothing about it other than you liked your same sex, but there was nothing about what it would mean in your life. So I didn't go some places. I will in a book if I ever have time to write it, because that helped for me as well. But no, I wanted to stay lighter. Although there's moments, obviously. You know, the scene that I love, one of my favorite scenes is near the end. And I just added that in the last, I would say, year and a half, when I visit Dad in the home and he asked me anything coming up, you know, because it says so much about that. He was 88 and he was in a home and he had dementia. So he came and go, but he still wanted to know any gigs coming up, you know, and how fantastic to be that age and still looking what's next and what's happening. And, you know, that's a gift. And I added that very recently. And I think it works really well.
Before your dad's passing, had you developed any of this one-man show?
Before I what?
Before your dad passed, had you developed aspects of this one-man?
Yes, I had done 2 readings.
Okay.
I did 2 readings, and they were videotaped, so I could study them. And he and my mom saw a videotape of it. They never saw it live, but they saw a videotape. And my mother said, I had to keep shushing your dad. He kept saying, it's like watching me. It's like watching me. And he kept saying that. As a matter of fact, I have a dear friend, Luther Oreg Guzman. He's been my official Gaytino photographer from the very, very, very first reading. And he's done everything. He photographed the filming, everything. And the first time we did a reading, he said, I want to watch it once in a run through before you do it for people so that I can see, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. So he sees me do the whole thing. And he comes up after, he goes, oh my God, it's like watching your dad gay. It was like watching a gay version of Lalo, which I thought was hilarious. So I took it as a compliment. I assume he meant it that way, you know. Yeah, so he at least saw that. He and my mom, but they never saw it a live performance. No.
We're approaching our 30-minute allotted time, but before we approach the end, I'm really curious if you consider yourself a documentarian. Is that a label you would give yourself beyond
I would.
Gaytino documentarian? Is that something you would take on?
I would now. Oddly enough, when I did do a documentary on my dad, I did not feel it at all because
Oh, really?
I never. I tried for years to get a documentary done on him. I mean, years. And I went to every major Mexican, Chicano, Mexican American filmmaker, documentary filmmakers who do all of them. I won't name them, but they're the best. Oh my God, yes. And your dad, absolutely. And it just never happened. You know, they have their own projects and I'm not blaming them, but it never happened. And finally, a friend of mine, Nancy de los Santos, said, you know, we should at least get your dad on tape telling his story so that it's there for research for whoever does it. Good idea. So he came I live in West Hollywood. He lived in Palm Springs. He came into my place 3 times for like 2 hours each time. That's a lot of footage. We're talking 6 hours. Tucson in the 30s, LA, the music scene in the 30s and 40s when he was seeing Olvera Street. I mean, amazing. That is history. And then we put it away. And then a couple of years passed and she said, you know, we're going to have to do it. I said, I don't know how to do a documentary. She said, if we don't do it, it's not going to get done. And she had done one, The Bronze Scream. So I said, okay. And so we just jumped in and I started to look at the footage. I said, we should have at least a couple of bites from Dad so they really see him. And as I started watching, I thought, wait a minute, why would we write a script with a VO when you've got him telling his own story? And so Lalo Guerrero, the original Chicano, which aired on PBS stations nationwide, in the, 2005, 6, 7, something like that. It's Dad telling his own story. And then we interviewed Linda Ronstadt, Eddie Olmos, Cheech, Luis Valdez, Dolores Huerta, and it's all intercut talking about Dad with footage of him. And it came out really, really well, but I certainly felt I kind of squeezed through. I would love to be able to do that today, but I would love to do a documentary. There's a million stories I would do it on, but I believe that ship has sailed. I'm too busy trying to get Gaytino sold,
Well, I ask because even though it is a taping of a one-man show, you do seem to have such a talent for not only obviously the writing, but for capturing this in such a revelatory way and transcendent way. So it was just amazing to see your documentary, and it was enriching, and it opened my eyes to a lot of aspects of history that maybe I had glazed over myself. And
So much.
I guess I want to know, if, as an artistic thesis, if you have one, what is it that you would want people to walk away with after watching this film, as a documentarian or as a filmmaker?
I want to say that you're really pretty cool, very smart fellow. I had no idea, but educators and scholars, etc. It's documentary theater. That piece is called documentary theater. And the truth is, when I started to submit to film festivals, I thought, it's not really a film. It's not really a feature, It's not got a cast and a screenplay. But it's not really a documentary. It really is a hybrid. It's its own animal. So I was afraid I wouldn't get into any festivals, As it turns out, I did get quite a few, but it is somewhat a documentary. For sure. But your question was, if
you had a director's thesis or a documentarian's thesis that you hope to impart on people, what would it be?
I guess I would like people to really understand what a gay man is or can be, and what a Chicano is. You know, even Chicanos don't know our history. You know, and I, as I say, I really saw it as an educational piece. And to me, the best way to educate people is for them to be entertained. I didn't want to lecture. You know, I wanted it to be fun, but to make my point. So, you know, a friend of mine took a friend of hers who was somewhat homophobic. I wouldn't say he was fierce, but when he left, he said to her, you know, I'm really looking at gay men differently now. I never really thought about that, you know. So to me, then it made its point, you know, to educate what it's like. Yes, I happen to be a Latino gay man, but any gay man. I had a young girl come up. I was Polish. Oh, I was Polish. I am Polish. And when I was growing up, I didn't like Polish music because when I was a kid, I didn't like ranchera music. I liked musicals. So they're all really universal themes as specific as Gaytino is. It's a father-son story, a best friend relationship, you know, self-identity. They're universal themes.
Well, Dan, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing the gift that is your film to the San Diego Latino Film Festival. It's such a treat to be able to talk to you today, from one Gaytino to another. Thank you so much for your time.
Do you have any? Mine. I look forward to meeting you in person, and really, you're an exceptional young man. You really are.
Do you have any parting words to leave with our listeners, or to our listeners?
Send cash. No, I don't know. Yeah, if I do a crowdfunding campaign, send cash.
And I guess what's the website where they should send the cash? If you do a crowd, is it?
Well, Gaytino.com. Gaytino.com. So if I do it, it'll be on there again. Who knows? But if not, enjoy the site. There's a featurette there that's fun and all kinds of stuff. Thank you, Moise.
Hopefully this doesn't send them something somewhere bad.
Wait, man, I gotta get a picture of that. That's too funny. I'm gonna use, but I want you in it. I'm gonna use that for well, let me get, there you go. Instagram tomorrow.
Hopefully that Gaytino.com doesn't send people somewhere else.
No, that's
okay,
it.
Good.
Yeah, that's right. No, they won't.
Thank you so much, Dan, for everything, and all the best.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye-bye.